What's going on, everyone? Today we're breaking down all things about the 2025 Los Angeles Rams, including if Puka, Nacua, and Davante Adams can provide wide receiver one upside in fantasy football land. If the Rams could finally curtail Kyren Williams' workload a bit, could Terrance Ferguson be the next big thing at tight end? And if Matthew Stafford is perhaps a dark horse MVP candidate, or at least someone you should consider in the later rounds of fantasy drafts. All that and much more here on today's Fantasy Life show. But of course, I cannot accomplish this alone. Accordingly, I'm joined by the one, the only Fantasy Life Director of Analytics, Dwain, the Rock McFarland. And Dwain, very excited for this show with the reigning NFC West champion. So let's go ahead and get right into it with the ADP audit presented by the fine folks at Premier National Sports. Quite a few fantasy relevant options going on here in Los Angeles. Of course, Sean McVay has made a habit of fielding high octane offenses ever since he joined up with the Rams back in the day. But Dwain, we do have a new face in town. Cooper Kupp is out. Davante Adams is in. So the question is pretty simple. Do you believe both Puka and Adams can provide potentially top 12 value in fantasy land?
Well, I think if you're placing bets on wide receiver rooms that could have two wide receivers in the top 12 in a PPR setting, I think the Rams are near the top. Like, they have to be near the top. Probably put Jamar Chase and T. Higgins battling them, right? And then if Dolphins offense was working the way it was 2 years ago, maybe Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle battle it out. But I think we'd have Puka and Davante Adams above them. I think it just comes down to like T. Higgins plus Jamar Chase versus Puka and Adams. And honestly, if I'm having to pick two, I think I lean to Puka and Adams just because Adams and Puka have both shown like multiple wide receiver one finishes. We look at T. Higgins, like, yeah, he had a nice spike year last year with the touchdowns. We really like T. Higgins, plays on a pass first offense. But I think that this would be the best bet, like, to put it on. You know, you could argue that it would be the Bengals, but I think that this is the bet. Just real quickly, like with Davante Adams, like, he's going to be almost 33 when the season starts, 32.7. So, I mean, we do know that there is this thing known as the cliff year, and we don't always get a warning or a signal that this is going to happen to the player. So it's always kind of tricky when guys get into this range. But historically, wide receivers have been putting up 57% of what they did in their prime. Obviously, Adams has done well. He's done way better than that over these last several years. Had a little bit of a down year with the Raiders, but I think we could argue that was more of a quarterback system kind of problem after seeing what he did with Aaron Rodgers last year. But man, the thing I look at, Ian, 29% target share. In his prime, it was 31%. So, I mean, yeah, it's a little bit lower, but it's still really good. But dude, against man coverage last year, 36% targets per route run. Like, that's just absolutely insane. 24% targets per route run against zone. 2.04 yards per route run for Davante, 2.74 in his prime. So obviously he's taken a little bit of a step down, and I do think we clearly both see Nacua as the lead guy here. Nacua actually has the third highest ceiling in our ceiling floor logic over at Fantasy Life. 24.6 fantasy points per game is his ceiling. And it's a dude, you know what it comes down to is, like, we love him as a receiver, but he also gets a little bit of work on the ground. And so that's just that little bit of boost that he and CD Lamb get that push them up in those. So I do like both of these players. I'm for sure. We can never say for sure anything, but I feel very certain on Puka being a top 12. Davante Adams, would it surprise me if he is? No, but he could also be more like a wide receiver 3. There's a wider range of outcomes for him.
It's been funny. Shout out True Media. They make it pretty easy to make some of these scatter charts. I enjoy, posting them on Twitter sphere from time to time. And just any per route metric, Dwain, targets, yards, first downs, whatever you want to look at. Puka is so far and away the number one guy in the top right of every single chart, man. It is absolutely ridiculous. I do believe he is, in fact, first in terms of yards and targets per route run among all wide receivers with at least 100 targets since 2015. So can't overstate how special of a start to his career it has been. In fact, in the Super Bowl era, man, he has averaged 18 PPR points per game first 2 years. The only wide receivers he trails, Odell Beckham Jr., Randy Moss, Jamar Chase, Bullet Bob Hayes, how about that shout out, and also Justin Jefferson. So couldn't be in more elite company. Again, I think we all agree. Puka, certainly someone where you do not need more than one hand to count the number of wide receivers you would rather have on the squad in 2025. With Adams, though, man, man, I'm with you. I don't think we saw any sort of evidence with the Jets that he is approaching, this steep downward turn to his career. I thought some of the releases and honestly yak ability he put on tape really did continue to show someone who's very spry and very capable of getting open. You mentioned the man coverage target rate. Another nice thing I like to look at is the separation ability. Shout out ESPN's open scores. And sure, not, finishing in the top 8 like he did in 2020, 2021, and 2022. Still back-to-back top 15 finishes, though. And again, look, even with Adams, it's not just a bet on him still being awesome. It's also a bet on him joining arguably the single most fantasy-friendly offense in the NFL when it comes to enabling these wide receivers. Since McVay and Stafford actually teamed up back in 2021, Rams wide receivers ranked second in both receptions and receiving yards overall. Yes, we got to give Puka and Cooper Kupp some credit for doing that, but man, Dwain, when I see them kick Cooper Kupp in the curb the way they did and then bring Adams in on a 2-year, $44 million deal, again, I trust Adams in his own right, but more than anything, I trust Stafford, McVay in his passing game. So yeah, for me, Davante Adams, top 15 wide receiver, and I'm with you. I would only put the Cincy Bengals guys ahead of, Puka and Adams in terms of their ability to both finish top 12.
Yeah, so I'm one behind you on Adams. I'm wide receiver 16. Like we said, we can't always predict the cliff year, so it could happen. If you go back, guys, and look at some of these players, they're scoring 16, 17 fantasy points, and all of a sudden it just goes to 9. They're at the age where it happens. But at the same time, to your point, you're getting to play with Sean McVay, which we know that he knows how to push the cheat code buttons. He knows how to sequence plays. You look at his play action rates, always way up there. You look at his motion on pass play, so motion at the snap. That number is always up there. Those are two numbers that really do tend to boost wide receiver production, and we've seen it year over year with McVay. So we know that Davante Adams is probably going to see some of the easiest looks, Ian, honestly, that maybe he's ever seen in his life. I think the real question I have here is, can Stafford get back to actually throwing touchdowns and not just throwing for yards? So like over the last 3 years, we'll go with the last 4 years. So 2024 to 2021. And remember, guys, the average NFL starter throws a touchdown on 4.6% of their pass attempts, 3.9% last year for Stafford, 4.6% the year before. So at the league average. Now, remember, the last 2 years, there's been injuries of Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua, basically like not tons of games where they're both 100% healthy. So that's a factor. The year before that, though, 3.3% touchdowns per attempt. The year before that, which was their Super Bowl season, what did he have? He had that spike season. That was his first year with the Rams. 6.8% of his passes went for a touchdown. So we do need Stafford to be more at least league average, hopefully above that. Maybe could he get to like 5% to really open up the upside for both of these guys to get there. In a PPR league, we could easily still have Puka as a wide receiver 1, Davante in the wide receiver 2 range, which would be like 13 to 24, and be fine even without a bunch of touchdowns. But I think the way that we really unlock the ceiling is touchdowns. And I do want to go back to that whenever McVay welcomed in Davante Adams. If you guys haven't seen that video, go check it out on X. It is amazing. Like, talk about a way like for your new employer to welcome you right in a team meeting, and he just starts putting cut-ups on the film on the board of, here are the things that Davante is going to do for our offense. And the big thing that I recall from that, Ian, I don't know about you, a lot of cool things he said, but what he's going to do for them once they get down in the green zone. So once they get down inside that 10-yard line, because that's been a challenge. Cooper Kupp, you got to really get in the slot. You got to move him around. They do a lot of those same things with Puka Nacua. Adams can just line up on the outside and potentially just win his matchup one-on-one. Then you do the scheme thing with Puka. So I think it's a better blend of two types of players. And maybe that unlocks that touchdown ceiling that we're talking about for Stafford that we haven't seen since that 2021 season.
Certainly would be great to get as many red zone, end zone targets, I should even say, as possible for Adams. But hey, man, just overall, really should have more than enough opportunities. Again, fully expecting Puka to be a number 1 here, but I'm looking at your projections right now on fantasylife.com, which we actually just spruce up, everyone. So if you want to go ahead and sign yourself up with a Fantasy Life Plus subscription, code QB10 for 10% off for right now. Again, have a ton of tools, cool projections, rankings, all that and so much more to be your one-stop shop to hopefully bring you general life happiness happiness and maybe even a fantasy football championship along the way. But Dwain, again, you have Puka earning 154 targets. That's third most in the league. Davante's right there at 6, man, with 138. So yeah, don't want to be the boy who cried, vacated targets or anything. But when you take away Kupp, you take away Demarcus Robinson, that's over 160 targets from the offense still on the table. Does seem like Adams is a very good candidate to soak up most of those. So again, feeling good about both these guys. Last thing with this wide receiver room, though, we did see Tutu Atwell fetch a 1-year, $10 million deal to be their clear-cut, number 3 wide receiver. Now, it's going to be a more of a pigeonholed field stretcher role, I would imagine. But we did start to see last year, Dwain, when Puka and Cooper Kupp were out, them actually featured Tutu as a full-time wide receiver, and he gave us a couple good games. So this is more so best balls, only best ball, okay? Do not draft Tutu Atwell in a redraft league. But can you get excited about Tutu at all, Dwain? Because I do feel like if something happened to either Puka or Adams here, maybe we could get something resembling that Demarcus Robinson year from last year, which, again, you're not going to be able to guess the weeks it's going to happen. But I do think there could still be something there for Tutu.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's best ball only, but that's the second or third time actually in Tutu's career where we've seen for a little stretch of games that they've had to lean into him, and he's done pretty good. Like, he hasn't turned into a wide receiver 1, but he's shown that he could put up like wide receiver 3 numbers. So he also carries a little bit of contingent value.
Snap that I know you love.
Yeah, tons of motion at the snap. Basically, they're trying to use a guy that already is very fast, but they just want him to be already moving when he gets off the line of scrimmage. Also makes it tougher to press a guy, which obviously could be a problem whenever you weigh like 112 pounds or whatever it is that Tutu Atwell, if the wind's blowing a little bit, sometimes he can't finish his routes. But when you look at Atwell and what he's done over the course of his career, when he's had these moments that there's not that you don't have, 2 strong target earners in the lineup, he has actually shown, to your point, that he comes through. But also, I think this points to, like, he's not anyone that we have to worry about, which points back to why we feel so good about Adams and Nacua. They're both very strong target earners, and we don't think Tutu Atwell is strong enough to really challenge in a way where it's like, oh man, that's going to dilute what those 2 guys are going to get. So, and we'd already seen that with Puka and Cooper Kupp when they were available together. And then I know we'll get to the tight end room here in a second, but also probably not anything, at least in 2024 or in 2025, that's going to make us feel too worried about really it being the Puka, Nacua, and Davante Adams show.
And honestly, even Jordan Whittington might be the better bet to soak up some of the Puka and Adams usage if one of them suffered an injury, a la kind of what happened to Demarcus Robinson last year. So again, good, strong wide receiver room. I will say that despite that money they'll go into Tutu, I found myself more so prioritizing guys like Diami Brown, Darius Slayton, even Dontavian Wicks in the later rounds of those best ball drafts. So again, guys, this has been our ADP audit presented by the fine folks at Premier National Sports. Again, want to give a shout out to our presenting sponsors today at Premier National Sports because, man, guys, high school athletes trying to take that next step in the journey into college athletics, you got to know more than ever about NIL and the potential life-changing opportunities that you have in that avenue. Fantastic. Hey, why shouldn't you guys get a piece of that pie that is the college athletics revenue? But again, it is the complete wild, wild west right now. So use the resources over at Premier National Sports to help get you what you deserve because, again, go make that money and why not play some good old football while you're at it. So premiernationalsports.com, guys, again, helping you learn about all things NIL only at Premier National Sports. All right, Dwain, we talked about some of the pass catchers involved, but one of the guys also going in the very early rounds of fantasy drafts is none other than Rams RB1 Kyren Williams. Now, last year it was not overly great for Kyren in real life, okay? Don't shoot the messenger, but you want to look at pretty much any efficiency metric other than touchdowns and fantasy points, which matter. I get it. He was not very good. So with that said, sure seems like Kyren could be on the verge of getting a nice contract extension this offseason, and we know Sean McVay loves him a true workhorse RB1. So thoughts on if the Rams, Dwain, could finally curtail Kyren Williams' workload, especially after spending back-to-back top 4-round picks on Blake Corum and Jarquez Hunter over the past 2 drafts?
Yeah, I really would love to see the Rams give him the extension. That would make us feel better, right? As far as where we're taking Kyren right now in fantasy drafts. On Underdog, he falls to the end of round 3. So there's a lot of people that are worried about him. This is a guy that was going at the end of round 2, early round 3 last year. So here's the issue, right? Okay, yes, the Rams have taken running backs in the last 2 years. Oh my God. Well, the problem is they've also taken running backs in 23, 22, 21, 20, 2019. They draft a running back every single year. Now, they did spend they did spend more draft capital in the last two. Corum round 3, Jarquez Hunter round 4. Kyren was a round 5 in 2022. Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson were back-to-back round 2 picks in 2019 and in 2020. So, I mean, it hasn't always necessarily meant, right, that they're just going to turn it over. I acknowledge, right, that they've taken these guys. And I do think that Jarquez Hunter is a better complementary back potentially to Kyren Williams than what we have with Corum. I feel like Corum is more like almost like, hey, probably fits right into Kyren's role, can handle that, larger workload. Not a real hyper explosive player, but probably going to do the thing the coaches want, or maybe not. He wasn't able to get on the field very much last year. But when we look at Hunter, a little bit more of an explosive player. It didn't always show up in all the data elements, but when you watch him and look at some of the things that the film folks have to say about him, I think there's positives with Jarquez Hunter's game. But again, it's tough to stand on that argument because the Rams do take a running back in every single draft. I think the other issue is the other side of the argument, which I think is great that you brought up, is when we look at his efficiency stats and you talk about the yards per carry going down. Yards after contact went down from 3.3 to 2.7. Missed tackles forced went down from 22% to 16%. Explosive rush rate actually went up a little bit to 11%, but here's the problem, Ian. Historically, and we've talked about this before, I've studied it, I've researched it, I've diced it like every freaking possible way, like trying to make sure I'm not missing anything. When we look at running backs and missed tackles forced, yards after contact, and explosive rush rate, which are things that we think tie to the running backs themselves, meaning they kind of own a big part of that, they're responsible for it. The fact is, it doesn't mean anything for their attempts the next year, up or down. So, right, if you're bad in efficiency or if you're good in efficiency. So if you look at this going back to 2011, missed tackles forced, the correlation between it and your attempts in the next year, right? So the year after, 0. And I'm going out 3 decimal places, guys, 0.000. It's not changing a guy's role. Yards after contact in the N+1 year for attempts, for rushing attempts. 0.02. These are R-squared values. That's nothing. Like if you were worked in a real company and you brought that number up in like a board meeting, everyone would laugh at you, right? And they would just tell you to get the hell out of the room. Explosive rush rate, N+1 year. This is the strongest one, and it's 0.08, right? So, I mean, we've just got a lot of data saying that while we like these things, because if you historically go find the best running back seasons ever, they're guys that ran for a huge yards per carry, had a lot of big runs. Look at Saquon Barkley last year, right? Yeah. Like, so it's not that it doesn't ever matter, but it doesn't lead to more or less work. It just doesn't. So the challenge is, like, we're all guessing. The Rams draft a running back every year, and this efficiency stuff doesn't tell us that a running back's going to get more or less work. So, like, I really think the only thing that could really help us here is if the Rams would give Kyren Williams an extension. Like, that would be like something like we could actually sink our teeth into. So I think it's really tough because I think there's actually a chance that we're all just wrong, because I haven't been clicking Kyren Williams' name. I will admit I've not been taking him a lot in drafts. And at the end of round 3, even if he doesn't get better in any of those efficiency metrics again, like, this is a guy that can score 12 to 15 touchdowns. Like, it could look really stupid. It could look really dumb that I just sat there and let Kyren Williams sit there at the end of round 3 and that I never really took him. So, because I think this, like, he could still finish as a running back 1. He could still finish as, he could finish as a top 6 running back. Like, that's in the range of outcomes for him. So I'm really interested in how you're handling him, because I honestly think the arguments that folks are throwing out there, while I understand them, like, they don't hold a lot of merit.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, man, where I came in not drafting him much, but after I kind of went through all this, tried to turn over every stone, and during the course of writing this team preview, I did go ahead and bump him up to RB10, and he has been someone I've been more happy to draft at that term. 2,800 yards, 31 touchdowns over the past 2 seasons. The only running backs with more PPR points per game are Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, and Jahmyr freaking Gibbs. So, yeah, the efficiency wasn't good. It was a lot better, though, in 2023, and we should give Kyren some level of benefit of the doubt, because this offensive line, every single starter missed at least one game, and they were all kinds of banged up throughout the whole year. So I guess my whole thing is, look, last year I was not drafting much Kyren Williams. That was a mistake, as we all found out. And it wasn't because of the punt return business. It was the reality that they used day 2 draft capital on Blake Corum, and all the offseason coach speak was talking about how they basically wanted to get another version of Kyren and help divide things up. That didn't happen. So excuse me for not overly caring about Sean McVay and Les Snead singing Jarquez Hunter's praises, because they seem to do this every single offseason, all right? Do we want to go back to the Allen Robinson quotes and see how those went out? So again, it's good that they have a plan for Hunter and that they have a plan for Terrance Ferguson. I've heard these things, and that's good and well. I do think they're good evaluators of talent. But man, Dwayne, if he wasn't going to lose the job last year, not just with the bad efficiency, this dude put the ball on the ground 6 different times. I was tied for the most of any other running back. I'm just, struggling to see exactly why Kyren is going to be immediately booted from the equation. So Corum and Hunter, maybe they are very good handcuffs, but lest we forget, man, this is the best offense, I should say, in terms of leaving one running back on the field for at least 90% of the offensive snaps. No one does it more than McVay and the Rams. And, I think that contract extension is going to happen. We've heard from Les Snead, we've heard from McVay, we've heard from Kyren, all 3 parties saying throughout the offseason that they, again, do expect to get something done before it happens. So I just wonder, man, if it does happen in training camp, is that going to be the final stone that really gets people going? Because if so, man, now should be the time that we're drafting them.
I'll just say this. If he signs that contract, he needs to go ahead of Breece Hall, at least. And I like Breece Hall.
No.
Breece Hall's a very good, talented player, but I think you could argue for Kyren as high as Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor range. I wouldn't move him past Achane, not going to get him past Henry or Genty or any of these guys, but I think he moves up quite a bit. I will say this. The reason I haven't been taking him at the end of round 3 is I do love taking the elite quarterbacks early this year. I've talked about it. There's just not a guy in round there's not a QB 10. Okay, by the way, guys, remember that is the promo code if you guys want to get a discount. There's not someone sitting at QB 10, 11, or 12 that we love like we did Jaden Daniels last year. Yeah, we like Justin Fields. We do like Caleb Williams. I've got him ranked pretty high. But still, I acknowledge those guys have more questions and not quite the same dual threat upside that what we saw with Jaden Daniels last year. So what happens is I get to the end of round 3 in these drafts, and there's just enough risk with Kyren that I'm give me Jaden Daniels. Give me Lamar Jackson. Give me Josh Allen. I know those guys' jobs are safe. I know that they're something I might not be able to replace later in the draft. So it's really been more of that. But I think if you start looking at the running backs, I think you could take him. If he signs that contract, I think you could be talking about taking him as high as some of the other players that we talked about, Jonathan Taylor, as well as Josh Jacobs. And I think you can start making an argument for him over a guy like T. Higgins or over Tyreek Hill or over Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson. Those guys all have question marks, right? And so if Kyren has his own question marks, well, they have question marks as well.
I do like Kyren versus almost all the wide receivers in that range. I'm with you. That has been the one kind of stop in me not going too hard in the paint for him, or the quarterbacks, and honestly, even George Kittle going a few picks later. But yep, Kyren Williams, my RB10 right now, highest of the Fantasy Life rankers. We'll see what happens again if, and I think more likely than not when, that contract extension gets done. Let's talk about the potential impact of another incoming rookie, Dwayne. It is Terrance Ferguson out of Oregon, someone that the Rams, again, seem to like quite a bit. That said, Tyler Higbee, not quite out of the question or equation yet, I should say. Was a situation last year where we spent most of the season recovering from that knee injury, but actually came back down the stretch and ended up putting up some solid numbers. Now, I'm not going to be putting too much into this small sample size, but again, Dwayne, it's a situation where Higbee's been there for a while, ended up averaging 11.2 PPR points per game, including the playoffs, good for tight end 9 status on the year ahead of guys like Mark Andrews and Dallas Goedert. So again, I'm not going out of my way to draft Tyler Higbee. I do like Terrance Ferguson a lot in dynasty land for these upcoming years. I just question if there's going to be enough targets for either guy to stand out in 2025. What say you?
Wow, Tyler Higbee giving me the hiccups right there. Sorry, guys. Yeah, man, looking at Higbee, I think he's going to share time this year, and he's just, the injuries that piled up a little bit. The age is getting there. Not saying that he couldn't, like you mentioned, be a low end, tight end 2 or something like that. But Terrance Ferguson, if we're thinking about him for, dynasty league purposes. If you're playing in a tight end premium, like you're going to have some interest here, but if not, like it's still pretty tough. I will say, I mean, obviously the Rams like him. They spent that second round draft capital on him. He comes in with a supermodel rating of 73. Guys, remember the rookie supermodel rating is on a scale of 50 to 100. So when you hear these numbers, just to kind of give you some context. And the big thing really with him was he wasn't like this hyper target earner ever at Oregon, Ian. But when he was given his opportunities, which is the other component I like to look at, and I use their career targeted quarterback rating, he came in at the 77th percentile. The quarterback rating when targeting this guy was 121.6. He's an underneath the zone kind of guy. He has a really good yak skills. So again, kind of a Jonnu Smith, Evan Ingram kind of archetype player. So he could be a guy that if in a year from now, like Davante Adams is another year older, right? And he is showing signs of wear and tear. We know Puka's still in his prime. You could see Terrance Ferguson being a guy that really does step into, a larger role. And again, a lot of this is trust in McVay kind of stuff, right? He took Tutu Atwell and they were wrong. The Tutu's been, Ian and I talked some positive things about Tutu Atwell earlier, but he should not have been a second round pick in the NFL draft. Like Tutu Atwell, that was a reach by the Rams. So it's not like the Rams are infallible. It's not like they're perfect with all these picks. But we do lean to McVay, typically, knowing what to do with these players, right, if they show him anything. I mean, Puka was a late-round pick, and look what he turned into. So Terrance Ferguson, for me, I would put him there. I'm still going to take Harold Fannin Jr. over him. I think really what it comes down to is a coin flip between him and Mason Taylor. Mason Taylor, you're probably going to no sooner. I think he's probably going to get more. I could be wrong on this. There's estimating here. I think he's going to get more playing time in year one. So I think we might get a quicker read, right, on how good of a player he is versus Ferguson. We might have to wait another year before we really see him on the field.
I will say I've been pleasantly surprised with how often I've seen Ferguson and even the Mason Taylors of the world still available in round 3 of tight end premium rookie drafts. All right, I'm in several of these, just TEP scoring settings alone. And again, having Ferguson there going alongside, true day 3 wide receivers like Jalen Royals and, some of these other dudes could not be me. Give me Ferguson 8 days of the week. I get taking the big running backs and we're going to have our first round QBs. And yes, many of the day 1 and day 2 wide receivers, of course, day 1 are going to be going ahead of Ferguson. But day 3, man, for Ferguson, even Elijah Arroyo and some of these other guys in round 3, I should say, pretty good value if you ask me. So good stuff on Ferguson. Finally, Dwain, let's end things with Matthew Stafford, who on the one hand, I think you could make a case that, maybe shouldn't be one of the cheapest pocket passers out there, going so far behind guys like Tua, Jared Goff, amongst others. On the other hand, we do know how much of a zero he is rushing. You talked about some of the passing touchdown challenges in recent years as well. So was Stafford someone that, hey, when I am in these drafts and need to have 3 quarterbacks or so, I already got a Puka or Davante, sure, I'll out on Stafford at the end. Certainly, though, not someone that I think people need to worry about too much in your more traditional 1 quarterback home leagues.
Yeah, I mean, he's averaging 2.6 yards per game over the last 4 years. So
only
saying he doesn't run,
rushing.
Rushing. Yeah. So saying that he's bad as a rusher is an understatement. You look at him as a passer, like I would put him in the range, Ian, where we're probably we'll project him somewhere between 225, 250 passing yards per game. He could jump into that 250 to 274 range, given the fact that we, all the things we talked about with Adams, and then you got Puka Nacua still in his prime. So here's the challenge, though. Let's say Stafford takes that step forward, because last year he was in the 230s per game. But let's say we put him in that 250 to 274 passing yards per game, okay? And then we give him that 0 to 9 rushing yards per game. So there have been 68 quarterbacks since 2011 that have accomplished that feat. How many of them have gone on to give you a top 3 quarterback season, Ian, out of 68?
2.
1. I've asked you this question before, and you said 2 last time. All right, so 1.5%, guys. Yeah, you were close both times. So the odds are just not good as far as when you're thinking about building if you're waiting to a late round quarterback, you're like, I'm going to make Stafford my guy. He could have a spike season as a pocket passer, which might make him like a QB 13, 14, maybe even a top 10 guy, right, in fantasy this year. Problem is, that's not going to, even if you get value on him late, he's not going to be a guy that changes the dynamic of your team. He could end up being the guy that fills the hole for you, right? And if the rest of your team is good enough, it's fine. But I would rather, Ian, be making bets on players like Trevor Lawrence, even CJ Stroud, because he offers a little bit more rushing upside. To be honest, JJ McCarthy would fit in this bucket. I think you could even make an argument for Cam Ward, that if in the first 3 to 4 weeks, if we're to be surprised by somebody scoring 23 or 24 fantasy points per game, it's more likely one of those guys that can at least do a little bit with their legs and then, potentially be matching what Stafford's doing as a passer.
And again, he did spike in 2021, got the Super Bowl first season in LA, threw for nearly 4,900 yards, 41 touchdowns, and he was still only the QB 11 in fantasy football land. So again, I've said it before. Yeah, again, I think in general, the fantasy point leaderboard lines up pretty well with the players who we do think are the best at their positions in real life as well. However, quarterbacks, when you start looking at the difference in rushing, and then running backs, when you get some of the pass catchers in there, those are the two kind of discrepancies we have seen. So don't hate the player, hate the game if you must, but Matthew Stafford, someone that's tough to get too far behind here in Fantasyland. That does take us to the win total, Dwain. Again, reigning NFC West champions. They are now sitting at 9.5. And honestly, I'm going to go ahead and take the over here. I think Jared Verse is a young, rising absolute star of an edge defender. We've seen them, again, really make some nice additions to that defense. Given the offense, really, I think can score with anyone when they are right. I'm going to go ahead and take over at 9.5 wins. This team, with 1:25 left in the fourth quarter in Philadelphia, was sitting at a 1st and 10 on the Eagles' 21-yard line. So again, you can talk about, oh man, that was kind of a collapse by the Eagles. They shouldn't even let the Rams in the back in the game. I get it. But again, for them to not even, I feel like, be at their full powers last year and be that close, I think this is a team that actually could be legit contenders in the, ever-loaded NFC. So over 9.5. What say you, Dwain?
Yeah, I'm going to take the over as well. I mean, they spent a 3rd-round pick again on an edge rusher and Josiah Stewart. Look, Terrance Ferguson, he might end up being good. I kind of wish they would have used their 2nd-round pick like on another spot where it's like this guy has a way to like get in there and start and make an immediate impact. And maybe Terrance Ferguson does that this year. Maybe we're like looking back at week 3 and are like, whoa, man, the Rams really have 3 weapons and Terrance Ferguson is one of them. Like Sean McVay, smart guy, so maybe that works out. I just kind of wish they would have used that like on another spot where I felt like it was a player that could make a bigger impact in year 1. But again, it is Sean McVay. I like all the things that you said about the defense. I think they've got some young, really nice parts here. Stafford staying healthy is really the key. You could say that's the key to any of these lines as a quarterback staying healthy. So not really breaking news here. But yeah, whenever I look at the Rams over the last 3 seasons, 10 wins, 5 wins. The line is at 9.5. So yes, I will also take the over.
Final note, just because, again, Verse was a lot of fun to watch, and I really liked how much crap he was talking about the Eagles before that game, and then backed it up with some sacks out there. But he actually now joins Micah Parsons, Chop Robinson, and Will Anderson as the only rookie defenders with a pressure rate of at least 15% since 2020. So again, awesome company. Robinson. Yeah, I know. He was getting after it too last year. So no, none of these guys are Aaron Donald, and no one else is going to be for quite some time. Rams certainly did a good job replacing it, at least in the near term, though, through some assets like Moneyball, if you will. So yeah, Dwain, good job by you, and good job by you listening out there again, guys. Again, we have so much cool stuff going on at fantasylife.com right now. Code QB10 for 10% off your Fantasy Life Plus subscription. We would appreciate it if you guys, we just want to try to be a little bit better at fantasy football. Help us out along the way. So for Dwain, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.